The people at the top are not competing. They're collaborating. I wake up every day. I don't know if it's a gift or an illness, but I wake up every day as if it's day one. For the first time, I'm seeing myself and I'm like, I'm not the person I think I am. I was in my early 20s and my mom was my North Star. And when she passed pretty suddenly from cancer, the entire world around me got really dark and I just didn't know what I wanted. And I don't say this frequently, but I'm comfortable today. I'm at a place in my life where I've done the work and I wasn't sure if I wanted to live or not.
How would you coin your leadership style?
I lead by example. I really genuinely love people and I want to help people be better today than they were yesterday.
Welcome to the show, Jayson.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
It's a privilege and honor to have you all the way from the Northeast.
I had to, the moment that we spoke, I literally booked it like the minute that we spoke, right?
Yeah. We were talking and a mutual friend introduced us in such a fun way. And it was one of those moments where Chris Winfield and Jen, Chris said, "You don't know Jayson?" I'm like, "I know the face. I don't know him." And he's like, "That has to change." And he literally sent that 3-way text in that moment. And I can't believe I haven't gotten the privilege to hang out with you before today.
As you were walking on stage about to speak to 1,000 people.
Yes, at their event.
That's the best part of that story, by the way.
It is. I mean, it's true. I've never had that experience where I'm like texting you and they're like, "Come on." I'm like, "Done." And I walked on stage.
And they literally sent me a video of you walking on stage. Like, this is what's happening currently. And I'm like, why is he texting me right now? But it says a lot about you. And it's one of the many reasons I wanted to come here as quickly as possible. And here we are.
Well, thank you. And I am most excited about your title because it is such a cool title and it really shows who you are and what we're going to get into. But Advisor to Game Changers.
I appreciate that. Yes.
And I have in my own head, I'm curious, were they game changers before you? And I don't know that if they were or they weren't, because I think that you might be that common denominator because you bring a level, knowing what I know about you and we're going to get into, you bring a level of excellence and the pursuit of excellence to everything you do. And I think it's contagious. And I think that the game changers that you advise with and why they bring you on is because they recognize that you're going to elevate them with your dedication to the focus of what you do every day to be the best version. And I'm a huge believer in that. But if you don't mind for the audience, what was that moment in time where you had that pivotal change to recognize that I have to focus on being my best self so I can then give and help others be their best self?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for the kind words. That's very, very nice of you to say.
I only speak the truth.
I hope some of it's true. I do think that it's a two-way street, right? So I really tend to surround myself with people that are operating at a really high level and a lot better than me at many things. I think that I am likely in some ways better than them at certain things. And, that's really the business scaling. So yes, I call myself an advisor to game changers. And I say that because my business and my career over the last 2 decades has evolved from representing a business to essentially working directly with the founder, the C-suite of a company, and having a seat at the table, really partnering with the brand and helping them get everything in order to scale. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I do. When did that change? I lost my mom after graduating college at the University of Arizona, which is extremely random that you also went to.
Bear down, and I'm sorry for that loss.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So
I knew there was something special about you, like the second, and it's that we both went to University of Arizona.
I feel the same way. It's like, that bond that we'll always have. And I feel like we had that before we even figured that out a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So for me, I was in my early 20s And my mom was my North Star. And when she passed pretty suddenly from cancer, the entire world around me got really dark, and I just didn't know what I wanted. And I don't say this frequently, but I'm comfortable today. I'm at a place in my life where I've done the work, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to live or not after that. And I kind of just numbed the pain for so many years, and I did that by becoming a workaholic
Mhm.
and drinking a lot of alcohol,
Yeah.
not smoothies.
In those moments, though, when you said that,
Yeah.
you became a workaholic to numb
Yeah.
the pain. You were drinking alcohol to numb the pain. Were you finding that through the work? I'm going to skip the drinking side for a
Yeah,
second,
sure.
but through the workaholic side, was it at least exposing you to these other elements for business that allowed you to then take them, or was it really a fog that period of time?
It was a fog, and then I realized that it was therapy for me, right? So
Mhm.
like I was surrounded once I started to really learn more and more about what I could actually do, being a retail real estate expert, right? And studying consumer behavior, I became obsessed, right? So my background prior to that, I was, always into fashion and music, and spent a lot of time in nightclubs. I was a DJ. So once I learned about commercial real estate, that's how I kind of gravitated to the retail side. And I was just fascinated that I could actually like work with brands and companies and businesses and help them to a point where the company that I had worked for had some really, really good people working at the company. And I started to look at them, and I would like dissect what they were great at. And I would like pull that from them and like build my own patch quilt. So I became
Mhm.
obsessed with the qualities that made these people successful. Now, at the same time, I think it was insecurity, being so young in an industry and at a company that, I used to say that the majority of my colleagues at the company were basically in the business as long as I was alive.
Right.
Now, here I am in the business as long as some of my colleagues are alive, right? And out of insecurity, I wanted people to take me seriously. But that also led me to not be myself. So I had to like put on the suit and the tie and show up and just almost pretend to be different than who I actually was. And that's a big part of my journey, right? Like over the years, I've really taken pride in showing people that you could be really successful in commercial real estate, and you don't have to look or act a certain way per se.
Today you're doing that. But
Yeah.
back then, I'm assuming you weren't
No, no,
you
no,
weren't
no.
but going against the trend. I mean, you
I,
said you were in the suit, the tie.
suit and tie every day. I remember early on in my career, after landing the Starbucks account, Starbucks corporate office was nearby to our office, and they asked me to come help them move boxes on a Saturday, and I showed up in a suit and tie. And Dan Shallot from Starbucks Coffee, who is still there and amazing, loves telling that story.
That you showed up to move boxes in a shirt and tie.
I did.
And did you stay all day moving boxes?
I did.
And did you make that friendship with Dan that day?
I know Dan gave me the opportunity when I pitched the account
Okay.
because I was not by any means, I should not have won that business at that time.
Why were you the one from your office that got to pitch the account, being so young?
Yeah, so I was asked to go to the pitch with a senior broker who absolutely shit the bed in the pitch. So it's interesting to look back at that moment, but some of the, I would say, most intelligent and nerve-wracking professionals that I'd ever met at the time were the Starbucks corporate executive team. And it was 5 of them sitting around a table, and this gentleman and myself. And I really knew nothing about the industry as a whole, but I did know a lot about the company that I worked for. And when he clammed up, like, I'm not even gonna say midway through the meeting, it was about 2 minutes in, and I had no choice but to jump in. I did, and I said, "If I may," and I started to talk about my company and what the company had done and how I believe we could help Starbucks Coffee. And I think they were impressed that I didn't come in acting like I knew what I didn't know. I think that's a big lesson for everybody. I think, early on, I also, they're very particular, and quite frankly, I went to the Starbucks School of Real Estate, and it's really why I'm as good as I am at designing and executing expansion strategies.
Sure.
So it's not a secret. I mean, they were very particular, still are to this day. And I always say, if folks could operate at 50% of what Starbucks expects of their real estate team, they're going to be successful. I wanted to dial that up to 200 and do things a little bit, even better than that. But yeah, that was the reason. I just kind of, jumped in and was honest, and they took a liking to me.
So because you went to the Starbucks School of Real Estate and were so intimately involved, I do have to ask a personal question.
Please.
When they were in their hyper growth stage, it seemed like they put one on every street corner and 3 in the same center, and it was, let's just cannibalize the competition and we don't even care.
Yeah,
that clearly is not their strategy, but it felt that way as a consumer.
It felt that way as their real estate broker. We were always looking very closely at the coffee competition, and we were getting down to one store for every 10,000 people in our trade area. That was the focus at the time. And this was, pre-drive-through craze,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we started doing drive-throughs, but it was really, we would still do stores, because it was still the time of the third place, right? It was home, work, Starbucks.
Which is one of the most brilliant things that they came up with.
Absolutely brilliant. And from there, it did change pretty fast to we only want to do drive-through locations in the suburbs.
And that's where they are now.
That's where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very few inline or end cap stores that will be developed. And it makes sense. I mean, the majority of their business goes out the window, so to speak, the drive-through window.
It's now the fourth place, the car.
There you go, right? So, everybody's habits have changed so drastically, and the world is very convenience-driven. So, their program has changed drastically over the years, and they're still amazing at what they do.
So you have the Starbucks account, which...
Before we go into the next part of my career, I do want to say this is something really important for folks. I think you could take something from this as well. Starbucks in 2008, 2009, when the world turned, took an opportunity to shut any underperforming store. And I think that is so important. I think that COVID, for a lot of companies that are smart, was an amazing rug to sweep underperforming stores under. Mm-hmm. And I want to make that point because I think a lot of professionals don't realize that you can absolutely close stores. You might have somebody really good at real estate and designing a strategy, and there might be other reasons that a store is not performing. There's plenty of them. Mm-hmm. You know better than me on the operating side. But I will say that if you have a store that is not performing and you've spent a lot of time, energy trying to, change the things to get it to perform, sometimes the best route is closing it.
In that, along those lines, is usually the case, being that you looked at the macro and the data and the psycho data and all of that before you picked a location, is there a commonality when you have your formula for a brand across all the brands you've worked with where underperformers just don't meet all those metrics? Or is there sometimes just...
There's anomalies.
There's anomalies?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are times when you're checking all the boxes, you're really excited about a location, and it's not performing where you thought it would. Mm-hmm. And then there's the flip, right? There's ones that, just look kind of better than mediocre, and, they check enough boxes, and you're like, let's move forward here. And it does really well, better than expectations. So, but that's definitely not the majority, right? It's pretty, from a strategy, market segmentation and site selection standpoint, the characteristics of a really good site are the characteristics of a really good site. And as we get to the next chapter of my career, and talk a little bit about Chipotle, Steve Ells, when we met initially, his mantra was lunch, dinner, parking. That was it. Lunch, dinner, parking. It's all he would say.
Seems simple enough.
It does, and it's accurate, right? I mean, depending on your concept, obviously,
Yep.
right? But and that's a suburban thing, obviously. New York City, you're not factoring in the
You're
parking
not
as
getting
much.
parking.
You're not, but you're getting pedestrian foot traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we get to Chipotle, because that was going to be my leadway, young kid lands a Starbucks account with Starbucks growth. You could have done nothing but Starbucks
Yes,
and built a great career.
yes.
But you decided to also focus on other amazing brands, and you met another incredible brand that you worked with, Chipotle.
Did I ruin that for you?
No, it's still
Okay.
good.
All right,
It
good.
actually just makes it even easier. Everyone knows
All right,
Chipotle.
sounds good.
Why did you, and this is the question that I get a lot in my world, but why didn't you just laser focus Starbucks? Because some would say, Jayson, just do Starbucks because this is the account that can take you forever.
Yeah,
And so you said, no, I'm going to do others as well, which obviously worked out. And
Yeah.
I agree with the strategy, but what was the thinking at the time to say, hey, I'm going to go bring on other accounts and not just put all my eggs in this Starbucks basket?
yeah. I think you and I are very like-minded. I just feel like if I'm focused on one thing and I have all my eggs in one basket, I'm potentially putting myself in harm's way. So that's the short answer.
Yeah.
I needed to now take what I learned and apply it elsewhere. And it's
Like a self-need.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a student of everything. Like I just want to learn as much as possible about brands and people that I admire. Which is so cool that I get to do what I do for a living, right? Because when I talk about, being an advisor to Game Changers, right? Being an advisor to Chipotle or being an advisor to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, a human who is building an amazing business and changing the world, it's really, really cool how, I can now do both,
Yeah.
right? So for me, it's, I guess really trying to continue to push myself and, have as much impact as possible. And the only way to do that is to, learn what works for different brands and for different people.
Sure.
So I'm constantly, it's really, I get bored quickly. I think you do as well,
do.
right? So you can't just focus on that one thing.
But you have that perspective now.
Yes.
But at the time,
Yes.
you're young in your career. I could just imagine the pressure probably from your company, from your confidants.
No, it was all from myself. Like, I didn't have really pressure from anybody. I mean, my father, after I started in commercial real estate brokerage and I was 1099, eating what I kill, no health insurance. He had recently moved to Florida shortly after my mom passing, sold everything that, was remotely, attached to her because he was just dealing with so much pain on that front. And he would tell me like, you're an idiot. Like, go get a job and collect a paycheck. Like you're going into debt and you have no health insurance, So but that never clouded my judgment as far as knowing that I had to focus on one thing initially from a career perspective if I ever wanted to become great at something, right?
Sure.
So even though I wanted to represent more than one company, I knew that in order to become the best at something, right, I needed to really play the long game. And the commercial real estate brokerage business is interesting, especially on the leasing side, because if I close a deal today, if I sign a lease today with Everbowl, I'm not getting paid maybe first payment, partial payment upon lease execution, which is plus or minus 6 months. The rest of the deal, depending on where it is in the country, we're getting paid from 12 to 18 months. I have Starbucks deals that had bar mitzvahs. I mean, I literally,
Right.
there were deals I worked on for 13 years, start to finish. And, so that's the type of thing where you realize from that perspective, there is a pretty high barrier to entry to actually becoming successful at an industry like that, right? So, and then starting a brokerage company and hiring people and taking on the expenses of all that stuff is even more challenging, let's say.
Sure.
But that's really, for me, it wasn't pressure from, it's funny, it's like actually eye-opening for me right now. It wasn't pressure from anybody. It was pressure within.
Hey, fitness fans, ready to crush your fitness goals? Make your move to EOS Fitness, where becoming a member starts at just $9.99 a month. Gyms are open 24/7 and packed with the latest gym equipment to keep your workouts fresh. What are you waiting for? Give them a call, drop by, or hit up jefffenster.com/EOS to join. EOS Fitness, better gym, better price. Now, let's get after those goals. Which is fascinating because a lot of people can't identify that pressure from within.
Yeah.
They look at that as noise or even something to put away because it's an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
That gnawing or whatever that emotion was that came with it.
Yeah. The challenge for me now is to think about, was that pressure from within, again, that insecurity of like, wanting to be taken seriously and proving to myself, obviously, as well as others, that I was capable. So it's interesting because I like to reflect a lot on my past as I work through, the different traumas and things of that nature. And, we'll get there.
Yeah. So you've obviously, as we know Chipotle, we know Starbucks,
Yeah.
and then a few other incredible brands prior to Sabre.
Yes.
But then you have that moment in life and you say, hey, I'm done working at this company. I want to launch my own.
Yes.
And
No, there was a step in between.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No problem. So, I tend to have a pretty good gut about the macro economy and where things are starting to feel like there's going to be drastic changes. And it's interesting because in one of my vlogs, I think it was episode 100, I actually mentioned that in a certain time frame, I thought that there was going to be a major change that was coming down the pike. And I'll flip you that video.
Please do.
It's super
We'll
interesting.
put a link down here.
Yeah,
so
we
people
have
can
to
check
put a
that
link
out too.
there. So, I had decided that now I had all of my eggs in two baskets and, people were starting to notice what I was doing. And all the big shops, the big commercial real estate brokerage companies came knocking. And I'm a very, very, I don't burn bridges. I'm loyal to a fault, which is rare in the commercial real estate brokerage industry. And
I think it's rare in all industries.
you're probably right. And, one company in particular started to make me essentially an offer I couldn't refuse. And it got real. And I ended up accepting a really, really great offer for myself at that time in my life that would give me health insurance and some, security.
Is this pre-marriage, pre-kids?
It is. Yeah. This is the end of 2006,
Okay.
Heading into 2007. I guess I'm approaching 30-ish. And I'm 5-6 years in the business. And I end up going to CBRE to spearhead retail services as part of the team in New York Metro. And I actually, my business partner now, who was my boss and mentor at the time that I was leaving, came home from his family vacation after the holidays. It was the new year. And, I asked to sit with him and sat down with him and, told him I was going to be leaving. And he asked me why. And I told him, and he said, shit, you got to go. I'm like, okay.
You weren't expecting that answer.
No, but I did. I think I already had told him that I was leaving my accounts behind. I was very clear when I was negotiating my contract with CBRE that I wasn't going to be bringing those accounts forward because regardless of the fact that I brought them in, personally, I looked at them as property of the commercial real estate brokerage. Now, mind you, I've had many people come and go from my teams over the years that have not looked at it that way.
Sure. Because it's also a financial haircut for you moving. You have to start over.
Absolutely. And, it's funny though, because I think that, I oftentimes choose intentionally, choose the path, the road less traveled, let's say. It's almost like I'm a glutton for punishment, but I think it allows me to really explore, a lot and learn a lot along the way. So I left. I started at CBRE in January of 2007. And the first company that I reached out to was a company that I had discovered that was Arizona based called Massage Envy. So I called
That
Massage
small brand?
Yes, I call Massage Envy corporate. And mind you, I'm only working with corporate brands prior to this. So I'm not in the franchising space. So they give me the phone number of an area developer that owns 5 states. And I call his cell phone. And this is like my first few weeks at CBRE, right? Now, I got to prove it to myself that I can go do this all over again, which I'm pretty confident at the time that I can, and I'll stop at nothing to do it. So, which I think is a very important quality if you're looking to accomplish anything. So I speak to the gentleman who owns these territories, and he says, I have good news and bad news. I said, what's that? Good news is,
which one do you ask for first when someone asks you that?
Wow, I don't know if I'm consistent enough to answer that. Okay. But he went on to tell me the good news. So he said, Jay, I'm coming to New York actually this weekend. I said, that's great. He's like, well, the bad news is that I'm touring with your competitor. I said, really? I said, well, when are you touring? He's like, Monday. I said, when did you land? He said, Sunday morning. I said, I'll pick you up at the airport. So this has been a common theme for me. He said, okay. So yeah, it's funny because I should go back. I should rewind to Chipotle and how I landed that account because it's similar to this.
Sure.
But I'll stick with this story for a second. We can go back to Chipotle. So I said, I'll pick you up at the airport. And he, without a flinch, he said, that sounds good. I'm landing at LaGuardia, and gave me the details. I picked this gentleman up, and we site toured the market for the entire day. I knew there was a pretty good chance that I was just touring him in advance of his tour with my competition. But I also know that I'm pretty good at what I do based on, again, putting in the work and learning from the best. And we toured, and he said, I'm canceling my tour on Monday. I'd like to work with you. So that was an amazing opportunity. And I'll get into why in a second. But back to Chipotle. So when I had a meeting set up with Chipotle after reaching out to them nonstop, because I'm just obsessed with the company at this time, and I finally get the meeting, and it was funny because it was a McDonald's connection that was, a lot of the Starbucks folks were former McDonald's people, and then a lot of the Chipotle folks were former McDonald's people. So there was, folks at Chipotle knew of me. And when I scheduled the meeting, I literally designed the entire strategy for the entire market and was ready to basically have the meeting with them, walk them through everything, hand it to them, whether I got the account or not.
That's the gold right there. And I don't think everyone listening, if you missed that, that's the difference.
Yes.
Because too many people come to these meetings that they finally get.
Yes.
And it's an exploratory meeting, and they don't want to deliver any value because it's not theirs yet, and they're trying to close a deal. And you came and said, I'm going to deliver value. I'm going to show my expertise. I'm going to give it to you because you're going to I don't care about this. You want me for my expertise forever.
Yes.
And that mindset is so consistent with people who land enormous accounts. So if you're listening to this in your own industry, that's the secret.
Yes.
Carry on.
I agree. And it's the secret in life, right? And I think you and I do that outside of business, and that's how you just create amazing relationships,
That's
right?
Which lead with value.
That's what it is.
Don't lead with asks, lead with value.
There you go.
Give before you ask.
Yes.
And if you do that, people want more.
And it goes back to, and we were talking about Gary Vaynerchuk earlier, and
great guy.
It's really the undertone of everything he talks about. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much on the marketing and media side that inspired me to grow my companies and businesses differently and develop a personal brand and all the things. But if you provide value with no expectations in return, it goes a very long way. And that is how you become, quote unquote, successful, whatever successful means.
Agreed. And to use the Gary example, as I was telling you, we just did a deal with Gary, to partnership with Everbowl and VFriends. I text him as soon as the contracts are finally signed. First thing he says is, I'm so ready to lean in. I want you on my podcast. And he sends 3 more texts to his team, and he's starting to add more there, which is not in the contract, nothing that we'd ever discussed.
Yeah.
But he was ready to do more than whatever the agreement was now that it's inked.
So Gary's actually being Gary. He's
Gary's
practicing what he
being
preaches.
Gary and at that level of success. Where think about that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not where he's
easy
trying
do.
to come up the ladder. He's
Right.
at the top of his ladder.
Yeah.
And he's still doing the same things that makes Gary Gary.
With the amount of like, things that are on his plate.
Yes.
He's not skipping a beat. He's
Correct.
doing it.
And it was instantaneous.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, no,
I'm not-
I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised, right?
Yes. Yes.
I knew that's what got him there. But it's
Yes.
always a question of at what point does it change?
Definitely.
And it doesn't with him.
Yes.
And I don't think it does with those uber successful humans.
I don't think so either. And by the way, did you just break that news on this show, or is that public information?
It is now.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think it's back to the Chipotle thing. After like midway through the meeting, they look at me and they say, "Why did you do all of this work?" And I said, "Well, I could never get the point across that I think I'm the best person to represent Chipotle without doing the work." And they're like, "Yeah, but we might not hire you." I said, "And that's fine. And you can have this and you can execute a strategy or a variation of this strategy without me." And fortunately, it didn't go that way. I landed the business, and it was, just a really amazing opportunity for me. And
Well, because there's another layer to that, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's not, I think too often we confuse the situation to think that the strategy that you created is the secret sauce.
yes,
And if you give that away, they don't need you. And that is not accurate, right? Ideas are a dime a dozen.
of course,
It's all about execution.
it's the action.
It's all the
It's
action.
the action.
Execution and action.
And again, I mean, that when I first discovered Gary many years ago, like that's give it away for free, right?
Mhm.
That and that's the amazing part. It's very disappointing that most people have the roadmap to success in anything,
Mhm.
right? It could be fitness, it could be business, it could be parenting, it could be being a great husband. It's all the things, right? It's just most people are not willing to actually do the things.
Why do you think that?
I think, I think innately most people are lazy, including myself. I wasn't always wired this way.
Mhm.
This is really just me continuing to level up over many years, and then
But something had to give you the gumption to stop being lazy. Because I think the challenge is inertia. If you're lazy,
Yeah.
to stop being lazy is not an easy thing.
it's not, but it's also self-awareness, right? It's also like, I thought that I worked really hard until I met people that worked way harder. I
Sure.
thought that I was very focused on my health until I met people that were in a completely different stratosphere. I thought that I worked out hard and trained and, till I met people that were, absolute savages. And today I'm just super fortunate to be proximate to people that are just changing the game, right? Like I don't think, and maybe not everybody has access, on some level. And I think it's all of the work over the many years now, decades that I've put in where it's like, I've always been preparing for this moment. The only reason that I started a podcast was to be able to sit with you and not fumble my words when I'm in your podcast,
Mhm.
right? Like everything's practice for me. So I've always looked at anything that I'm doing is never a waste of time, right? So long as I'm honing my craft.
Right. Right. No, it checks all those boxes for sure, what you just outlined. And there's so much there that I could unpack and go with, because the Mathis twins, these two awesome dudes from South Florida, they have this cool saying, and I just never can get it out of my head ever since it's their brand, but it's exposure leads to expansion. That until you realize that there's more, and it's true, people think they work hard until they are around people who work harder.
Absolutely.
You think you work out hard until you're around people who work out harder. You think you're studying until you're around someone who studies more efficiently and harder.
Yes.
And so breaking that mindset, because you're right, the roadmap is not, it's not nuclear fusion, right? Or fission, or whatever the word is. We're not building nuclear bombs. I mean, anyone can learn how to get in shape.
Yeah.
You hire a coach because you don't have the accountability, and you need someone to hold you accountable to execute that plan.
That's right.
And that's what Chipotle saw. It's like, this strategy is brilliant, But without Jayson, someone else may take this for now, but what happens when it's time to call an audible? And they don't have the recipe to understand what had to go in to make this, so they won't be able to adjust this when the wind changes.
They also took into consideration the fact that I went above and beyond. I
Well,
went
that's a
that extra
character.
mile, right?
That's a character.
Yeah, and I think, but when you're building a team, that characteristic is extremely important, right? You want to know that you have people that are willing to go the extra mile, regardless of whether or not it's going to go their way.
Sure.
And that's, that carries through everything, right? Like, I'm happy. It's really, I mean, just, you can give anybody the playbook on anything, and it doesn't mean they're actually going to put the action behind it.
That's right.
And most people will not, right? And
you
that's okay.
You see it in professional sports. It's the easiest example because you get to see the outcome every day on national television.
Right.
These are all the highest performers in the world. There's a couple that are the absolute best, and you listen and they're open about their work ethic. And, you know, Tim Grover talks about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant all the time and what made them different. And the greatest, and I'll share it because it's one of my favorite Kobe Bryant stories, but Jason Williams was a young rookie playing in the NBA, came from Duke, and they're playing the Lakers. And so he's like, I want to show up early. I want to make sure I'm ready. I want to impress Kobe Bryant. So he's like, I showed up 4 hours before game time, and I'm going to put in an hour and a half workout. And I get there, and Kobe's already in a dead sweat, like drenched.
Yep.
He's like, so I did some work for about 90 minutes. He wasn't paying attention to
Light
Kobe.
work.
No, he's like, I was doing hard work.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, so I'm done, and I'm sitting down, and I'm taking my shoes off. I look at Kobe, and he's still going as hard as he was when I got here. So whatever, okay, I'm a little concerned, but we go play the game. He drops 40 on us. Yeah. Then after the game, I go up to him and I'm like, Kobe, I have to ask you, I got there early trying to do as much work as you, or maybe even outwork you. And I saw you and you were going so hard. And I just have to ask, like, what gives? And he's like, I saw you walk in and I wanted to make sure that you knew no matter how hard you work, I'm going to work harder.
Absolutely.
And that was his mindset.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it.
Anyone in the NBA can try to duplicate it, but they don't. Because the want to isn't matching the work required.
Yeah.
The desire for what that results were, the difference between where they are and where they may get, while it's small in percentage, it's enormous in their craft.
Yeah, of course.
To them, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the hard things for everyone who's sitting around saying, how do I improve my work ethic? How do I get in shape? How do I improve my career and my craft? It's like, you've got to recognize that there's a level and a season of uncomfortable that has to happen.
Yeah, and I think you need to seek discomfort, right? Because
did you say seek it?
Seek discomfort. Yeah, and that's a big part of what I do. Again, today, this is an evolution, right?
Sure.
This is not something that happened overnight, but it's really important to me that I am doing uncomfortable things every day.
And you have a checklist for it.
I have a checklist for it, and I complete that checklist at the end of the day. And actually, it's interesting because, as I told you when I walked in this morning, I fractured my clavicle on Saturday. And I'm in pretty consistent pain, and I'm, traveling with luggage and multiple hotels, and, people around me, including my wife, were like, are you still going to California? And I would just turn and be like, yeah, of course I'm going, And I think, quite frankly, most people would have rescheduled. It's that thing where, and I don't want to say like I will outwork anybody. I'm surrounded by people that will definitely outwork me still, sure. and that's why I surround myself.
But it's not
with
you
these
versus
people.
them; it's you versus the you.
100% correct. That's absolutely right. But it's also, listen, when you get to a certain place in your life, it's also like rescheduling this is very challenging, sure. right? Like for you and for me, and I feel blessed to even say that, right? Like it's things when you work hard for a long period of time, the work starts to compound, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're doing the right things with the right intentions and making sure that you're really, really only partnering with people and brands that make sense, right? Like it's funny because that's a luxury, obviously, especially like as I say that I think about my earlier career, I had to work on a lot of things that I had no interest in with people that were so rude to me, and just generally not good people. And as time went on, I started to be able to really just pick and choose more and more. And, not just on the client front, but also, on my team, right? Like I've always had challenges with, big producers on my team that were just miserable to be around, right? Or cancers within the organization. And it's a scary thing to remove that, because that your top line revenue is going to be affected by that decision. But all of that has always worked out long term.
Yeah.
Always.
And I want to go into your leadership and your leadership approach, because I think it's brilliant. But I really want to hit on that checklist that I see you do, because you do seek discomfort every day.
Yes.
And I'm not going to hit them all, but I know you hit the sauna and the cold plunge every day.
Yes.
You do the workout every day.
Yes.
What are the other ones? I know you focus on your sleep.
So the whole premise of 2023 was also no alcohol. So alcohol free for 2023. So this was the first year that I elected to remove alcohol completely. And that has been the biggest cheat code for me. Prior to finding contrast therapy, ice baths are really, really cool. They
are cool.
Oh, it's so
cool in temperature. And
yeah, both. Do you do ice baths?
I have one.
All right, good.
Do I do them? I don't want to over embellish.
Fair.
Infrequently.
Okay. You got to do it more.
I do. I sauna
Okay.
frequently. I have a sauna.
Love it.
I'm in that 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah, that's a lot more comfortable. Makes sense.
As an entrepreneur, I know how meaningful it is to invest in the people and causes that are close to me. And on GoFundMe, it's easy, safe, and powerful to do just that. Whether you're supporting a family member, friend, local business, or charity. And whenever you make a donation, you're protected by the GoFundMe Giving Guarantee. Visit GoFundMe.com today to help make a positive difference in your community. It is more comfortable, but it's also, I find the cold plunge I've felt the results better when I have an acute injury.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't notice much when I didn't.
Yeah.
Or with the sauna I did.
And I love that, by the way, because I think to each their own.
Sure.
Right? Like, don't just jump on a bandwagon on something because everyone's saying it's amazing. If you do it and it doesn't really make you feel better, because that's how I live my whole life, right? Like if from a longevity or life optimization standpoint, if all these things are good for you, that's great. Again, long-term impact. But if I'm doing an ice bath every morning, it's because it makes me feel good.
Right.
That's all it is, right? I like linking together those things.
Is that the first thing you do in the morning?
It is, yeah, typically. Not this morning.
Yeah.
The hotel you recommended didn't have an ice bath.
It had a cold shower?
It did have a cold shower. I can't stand those.
Which ice bath do you use at home?
So I use the ice barrel. So I actually use
ice barrel too.
You do?
They sent me one.
Do you know Wyatt?
I don't.
The owner of Ice Barrel?
I don't.
Well, I'll have to connect you.
Yes.
Wyatt's amazing.
Yes, I have one in my backyard.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in New York temperatures right
ice.
now.
You don't need ice. You just open the hood.
No, you don't need ice. See, this is what it's about, though, because I want to pause there for a second, because I'm going to connect you to Wyatt. You need to know him personally. He's an amazing human, and you guys will.
I would love to meet Wyatt,
famous.
And I want to thank him for the ice barrel.
There you go. That's amazing.
Yes.
So it's interesting because actually somebody had reached out to me on Instagram that owns several different businesses, is based out of San Diego months ago through mutual friends. And he has a contrast set up at his house. So I'm going to be heading there at some point later today to actually jump in the ice and use his sauna. So,
and that's what you call a contrast setup?
Contrast.
Because I guess I have a contrast setup, but I've never heard that term.
Yeah. So contrast is really, doing rounds back and forth between the ice and the heat.
So what's your regimen?
So I'll jump in I do ice first for 3 to 4 minutes. And then I jump in, I have a traditional sauna because it gets very hot, over, I prefer over 200. So I'll go about 15 minutes in the sauna and do 3 rounds.
After the sauna to get in that ice bath.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not bad. It's not.
Is that harder than the first moment in the ice bath, the first round?
It's funny because a lot of people jump into the sauna first to get hot and then jump in the ice. But since that seems easier to me, I like jumping in the ice first.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I'm like a glutton for punishment on some level.
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do the contrast therapy, and
Yeah.
then
And I don't, contrast is not every day. Like that takes an hour. So it's, but
how many days a week?
So I like to get in there 2 to 3.
But you do the ice bath every day,
Just the ice bath every day.
not the sauna.
For 3 minutes. First thing in the morning.
Yep.
Walk out of my house, jump in the backyard. The weather in New York right now is, anywhere in the, call it 30s typically early in the morning, and just jump right in. And it sucks every time. And that's the point.
Yep.
But I get out and I'm like ready to take on the world. And that's really what it's about for me. If it's going to make me live better and longer and all the things, amazing. But I'm just doing it because I feel really good after I do it.
Sure.
And it's the whole eating the frog thing, right?
That's right.
Like, knocking out something really challenging first thing in the morning.
And that's regardless if it's an ice bath or not, that's such a powerful daily routine. Habit.
By the way, you know who inspired me to do my first ice bath?
No.
Jen Gottlieb.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did she inspire you to do it?
She was talking about her Sunday ritual of doing ice baths. And I'm like, that's like interesting. And I need to understand, because I first started in my bathtub, and it was a result of seeing her talk about it on her content. And that's a theme that she talks about as well, obviously, like seeking discomfort,
Yep.
and, all the things which a lot of folks that are, performing at a high level talk about. And
But it's because that's where you can't grow and growth requires uncomfort. Growing pains when you're a kid is a real thing. In order to grow, something has to change.
Yeah.
And through change, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. You see, using social media, talking about Jen, right? Like being seen, that whole concept.
And her book is fantastic.
It's amazing. And her and Chris are amazing. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
And she also does that morning ritual where she does her makeup on a live, which for a woman must be hard.
Definitely.
Right? Because
until it's not.
And I asked her actually in that chair, I said, because to me, it's like my wife, she doesn't want to be seen till her makeup is on.
Sure.
Here she's going on with zero makeup. Her eyes may be puffy. She may have sleep in her eyes. She's doing her makeup publicly.
Yes.
It's just such a contrast to the whole idea of makeup.
And building community along the way.
And being that vulnerable publicly.
That's right. And for me, when I started going heavy on social in my industry, in commercial real estate, there was nobody that had a weekly vlog in 2016. Like it didn't exist. And Gary and I had talked several times, Vaynerchuk, going back to Gary. And I was like, I gotta let people in and create, for me, the style, it was highly produced and it was more just fly on the wall, so to speak, right? Because he would always talk about documenting, not creating, right? So for me, it was easier because I got a lot to do in my day, right? So I can't necessarily just be focused on content creation. So having somebody following me with a camera and doing all the editing and whatnot worked really well. But I got terrible feedback. I mean, everybody in the industry was all they wanted to talk about is how much of a loser I was because Jay, you're in commercial real estate. Why do you think you need to be on camera? And it was funny because that made it more exciting to me. Shouldn't surprise you.
Sure. Glutton for punishment.
Exactly. So but what was so interesting to me was all of these people now just wanted to talk to me, even though it was negative energy, they wanted to talk to me and they wanted to come up to me and talk to me. And the first question they would ask me is, I don't get it. Why do you do this? Right. And I'd be like, so you come talk to me. And they'd be like, And that consistency is everything. Yes. Right. So I did it before anybody in my industry, and I met Ryan Serhant, I want to say through Gary. I don't think we met through Gary. Gary and Ryan did a fireside chat at Agent 2021, which is funny because it's now 2023, almost 24, and that was probably 2018, probably 2018. And which would make 2021 kind of like
in the future,
a little out there. Yeah, makes sense. So Ryan and I hit it off. He invited me to the fireside chat, So Ryan announced that day that he was going to be launching a vlog. And obviously it was a result of Gary. And I'm sitting there filming for my vlog and he's announcing that. And we've since created a partnership, actually, Ryan and I, on the residential side. And, you know, all of the things that have happened as a result of me not getting discouraged by people giving me negative feedback, by not living in fear of other people's opinions, has been the biggest blessing. I mean, the things that go on as a result of my Instagram DMs, I don't even really talk about this because it is something that sounds braggadocious, you know, if I'm saying it in a certain way. And it also, you know, it's again, it's one of those cheat codes that have enabled me to really change the dynamic of how to land accounts, right? Which is the whole reason I've been doing all of this. But I don't think, you know, most people would realize how unbelievable this web has been for me and for the businesses that I'm a part of and for the investments that I'm a part of and for all the things, right? Like it's the common thread that I think a lot of elite performers are all being seen and comfortable doing the things we just discussed. It's weird though, because you're a unicorn like me that also you have a concept that needs real estate that it's so, you know, it's funny because we would have less to talk about. We're not here to talk about real estate. Like we're here to talk about life optimization and all the things.
But we're going to do business together.
Yeah.
It's just the way life works because you do business. I mean, and I think I'm so glad.
Let me cut in and say we're going to help each other.
Of course.
If that means
I say I only do business with friends.
Okay.
That's my rule in life.
Yeah.
So
love that.
Some people don't. I only do business with friends.
Love that.
So we will become friends before we do business.
Yes.
Otherwise, we just don't do business.
Yes.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I love that.
But what you just said goes back to the whole theme of this podcast, really about success formula, where Gary can talk about document, don't create. Gary can say, you should do a vlog back then. You should be on social. And the average person will hear that and say, okay, I'm going to go do all those things. And then they're not going to get the results. And they go, well, it doesn't work. The difference
they're going to stop before the results come.
Well, I'm going to say, I don't even think it's a matter of stopping before the results come. The difference is what they're not doing is all the things that you do to make you optimize your person, your profession, the you that is you, makes it so when you create that content, you have the results already, and now you're amplifying them socially versus trying to amplify mediocrity. And I don't mean that derogatorily, but I mean that if you're not remarkable in whatever craft you're now documenting publicly, why is that going to inspire anybody?
Yeah.
If you're just mediocre Joe and you don't have your life optimization and you don't kill it and you're not an advisor to Game Changers and you haven't worked on your craft for the last 23 years and you haven't improved yourself every year with a focus of improvement. What am I going to look at when you amplify this every day?
Yeah.
I'm going to see you do the same thing average Joe's doing across the world.
Yeah.
Why is that inspiring versus an Alex Hormozi who takes the social media world by storm? But look at what Alex did prior to that.
Sure.
Right? Like as an example.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I want to make sure everyone is understanding for success is the attributes that you've talked about, the dedication to always be making sure that you're the best you, right? As you went through that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're not going to, you may choose the hard path. You have a unwavering loyalty that even if it's against you, right?
Yeah.
And the contrast that you do every morning and you eat the frog every day.
Yes.
Right? You gave up alcohol. You made tough decisions. You have a thirst for learning and knowledge. It comes out in your content because you're improving every day. So when I see your social, I'm inspired, right? I'm a guy who tries to do those same things.
Yeah.
And I'm watching your regimen and I'm like, this is inspiring.
Yeah.
If you didn't have if you didn't have the fortitude that you do and the makeup that makes you, I just don't think that you can't just hear, hey, amplify your mediocre message. No one cares because everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
So to stand out, you have to match those things with the personal development and the human growth and the human optimization.
Yeah. Well, I first off, honored to hear you say that. Really appreciate that. And I truly believe that we all limit ourselves, right? So if we truly want to break through to the next level, we have to do the things. So, I would never have been able to break through to the next level if I didn't stop drinking.
Correct.
I would never, if I didn't jump in an ice bath every day, if I didn't, because I think we're only as good as our health, right? Which is first and foremost. I mean, without our health, we have nothing.
And you have a
So
fantastic shaped beard.
thank you.
I mean,
that
is, if I could grow that, I would have that.
It's funny because there's a lot of conversation about the beard, and I've always changed my look. And it's almost like I just look at life as seasons and chapters. And, I have a lot of fun with the development of myself. And, for me, it's really, I think it's also important to create a brand as a person.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's not just because I'm the CEO of Sabre, Jay Siano should stand alone. Right. And the company should also stand alone.
But that personal brand, because I get frustrated traveling, speaking, entrepreneurs, they all struggle. The ones that I talk to are usually the ones that are struggling, that are asking for advice. And they're struggling because they're like, oh, I'm posting 3 times a day. I'm jumping in an ice bath every morning. They're doing one or two of the things.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think why I think this is such an important message that they have to learn is like, and I use social media because I see it so much, and I'll repeat one comment I just said: you can't amplify mediocrity and expect results, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're not taking personal accountability to be the best at whatever you're doing, the other thing doesn't matter. And I think we want the result before the work.
Definitely.
And it's clear as day to anyone who is successful. And you talk about access and proximity. I want to be around people like you that are optimizing their life every day because it inspires me. And I want to get better. And I'm going to be the average of the people I hang out with.
100%.
So if you're not doing that, but you're just amplifying mediocrity, I don't care.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier. Like, it's just, I chose something, right? Like, I chose commercial real estate brokerage many, many years ago. And there were times in my life where I was bored, where I felt like I had accomplished what I set out to accomplish in that specific mastery of a market. What did I do? I grew my geography, right? Like, I became a top broker in New York, and that was great until it wasn't. And I was like, what's next, right? Like, and as you evolve and grow as a professional and personally, you realize that, for instance, I landed an account, a solid core account in maybe 7 years ago. They had a handful of units in Metro DC. I met with the founder, Ann Malum, who is one of the most amazing business people that I've ever had the opportunity to work with, and a very close friend. And in our first meeting, she's telling me that she wants to get to 100 corporate locations in the next 5 years and exit. And I said, okay, well, what's your strategy? And a lot of times I interview, especially now, I'm very much interviewing the potential client as much, if not more, than they're interviewing me. And she basically told me, how she planned to get there. And it made sense to me. And I said, well, that's great. We're going to do it together. Let's go. And we did. And, a Megaformer Pilates group fitness concept that was regional at best at the time, is now the dominant boutique fitness, probably business in the world. We got delayed a little bit by this thing called COVID, but we hit we hit 100 units about maybe 7 months ago in Santa Monica, California, and she exited the company for just shy of 90 million.
Congratulations.
And yeah, and it's just one of those. But the point is that I was put in touch with her because somebody that was a mutual friend was like, well, if that's what you want to do, I know just the guy to help you do that. Why did he think of me? Shout out Jayson Siano. You know what I mean? Like, why? Because I put myself in a position for somebody in Washington, D.C. to say, I know the guy. And honestly, it was probably a mix of, me getting really good at my craft, him seeing me talk about it on social media, right? Like me being top of mind. If I wasn't top of mind in that moment, and we still represent SolidCore today, and they're looking to add another 250 units, corporate, which is, I don't think any group fitness concept that I know of has done that, right? So it afforded me the opportunity. Again, the work that I did, all of the different things, right? Like, again, not getting discouraged when people were saying, why are you using social media, right?
Yep.
Including like the closest people to me, right? Who just didn't understand. Everybody needs to realize like you need to do things your way. Like somebody else, and they could be tremendously successful. You're not trying to live somebody else's life. Only you know what you're trying to do, right? And the more that you climb the ladder and the more you start to attract these types of people that are your tribe.
Yep.
That's ultimately what it becomes. But don't think that you're just going to become the best at social media, right? Like, no, I was a really good commercial real estate broker and advisor before I started leveraging social media, to your point. And
also you were really focused on your personal development
100%.
in a 360-degree perspective.
Yeah, but that even came a little bit, on the heels of starting the social media journey. And what's crazy, Jeff, is social media became an accountability tool for myself. Like if you go back and look at the videos of me, I'm not me now, right? And it's like, and again, always living and being that me versus me, like really, like for the first time, I'm seeing myself and I'm like, I'm not the person I think I am. And that was extremely eye-opening to me. And I can tell you today, however many years later, I'm the person I thought I was, but I wasn't then, and that's crazy. It's really interesting to think about it that way because, I was willing to put in the work. And going back to, the loss of my mother and the trauma, I had to remove these things that I was numbing myself with to be able to sit with myself and really work on myself and surround myself with people that want to do the same. Everybody's dealing with something, right? Like, and what you guys are doing with Everbowl, right? Like superfoods and all of the things, what you put in your body is everything. And who you surround yourself with or hire to help you with things collapse time. That's all that we're doing, right? Like anybody who's operating at a really high level, the people at the top are not competing. They're collaborating.
It's true.
In every way possible, right?
And you're validated by the people you have who have experienced the you.
Yes.
And so, and I want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm saying. I'm not saying you have to have already been successful to use social media. I'm saying you have to be on a path where you are being and improving every day.
Agreed.
If you want to amplify, because if you're just trying to be a social media influencer with mediocre life habits and zero optimization, you're just going to get drowned out in today's world. Maybe 10 years ago, it was easy.
Definitely.
But today,
no, it's noisy.
It's noisy.
And people are, attracted to the people that are really operating at a high level, right?
Yes, because it's contagious.
Yeah. I mean, that's
what I want to look at.
100%.
I mean, I want to see you get in that cold plunge every morning.
Yeah.
I want to see the checks that you've done your son because
and they're not always checked.
Accountable. No.
Like that's the thing.
Yesterday wasn't.
Yeah, yesterday was. It couldn't be. It couldn't be. I was traveling.
But what that does is it makes me say, okay, he's on a mission. You don't have to be perfect. Perfect is not what we're after. We're after remarkability.
Yes.
So some days you do hit perfect, some days you don't. But the path you're on is improvement every day.
Yes.
So before we wrap up, I do need to.
We're wrapping up. I thought we were going to do a triple episode.
Well, we can. Let's go. Round it up. We're doing more. I want to get into your leadership.
Yes.
Because I think you have a strategic leadership style that I find to be very, I don't want to use the word inspiring again, but I find it to be unique and I like your perspective and approach on it. If you had to lay it out for the audience, like how would you coin your leadership style?
I mean, I lead by example. So I think I lead by example. I really genuinely love people and I want to help people be better today than they were yesterday. And that's, I think, a major part of leadership is helping guide people, maybe even to places that they don't know that they can go, right? And finding what superpowers they have, and everybody has them and everybody has gifts. And I don't want people in positions that they are not passionate about, because they're never going to be great at that, right? So, giving people the tools and the resources to be great is what I enjoy doing as a leader. And then, I would never ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And, I wake up every day. I don't know if it's a gift or an illness, but I wake up every day as if it's day one. So
it's a gift.
I tend to agree. And
it's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a gift with thorns, but it's a gift.
Yeah. It's interesting. But again, the amazing people in my life, including my wife, who's, it's funny because a lot of the good qualities that have rubbed off on me that converted me from lazy, I have to give her credit for. She's a dietitian, nutritionist, and has been working out like a absolute savage for as long as we know each other. And, again, she's somebody that I thought I was like working out hard until I, would watch her consistency and, the way that just the non-negotiables, man, that's what it comes down to. Like there are a lot of non-negotiables that we have both, personally and professionally and within our family. And, by the way, it's challenging for me. My son loves basketball. He is kind of struggling. He thinks he's better than he is. Then he gets discouraged and all the things. And, I'm doing what I do. Also, additional accountability for me is, just watch me, like watch what I'm doing. Do I want to get on a flight with a broken collarbone and carry my luggage and, so on and so forth? No, part of me doesn't, but this is what I need to do if I want to be the best version of myself. And that's what I strive for every day. And that's what I want for my kids, and I think, when you asked me a question earlier about, when did it all change? Kids were, I started this podcast off talking about like being in a dark place after losing my mom, losing my North Star, and not necessarily knowing if I wanted to even be here, to the complete opposite, the brightest life I could possibly have, surrounded by the most amazing people and new friends that I know are, friendships that are going to last forever. And ultimately, I have to lead the way for my children and anybody else that I could possibly have a positive impact on. And that's what it's about for me.
Well, I mean, we could do a triple episode because there's so many more things that I'm going to talk to you offline about.
Yeah,
and we're going to have to do this again because you are leading the way. You've been an advisor to Game Changers, and it's been clear in your career what that has done for those brands and for you and your development, and watching you today. The new friendship, but watching you on social media, obviously I feel like I know you a little better.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I've had access to it. You live it every day. So your children are seeing that. They are watching, and it will hit because, I have older kids and they don't always hear what you say.
Yeah.
And they don't always take the words that you say, but they definitely follow the actions that you take.
Sure.
And they're watching whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. You dropped so much wisdom and gems to the audience. And for everyone watching, if you need some accountability, you need to not only follow Jay, but just watch his story every morning and watch those checks.
I appreciate it.
And you're going to say, you know what? I gotta do more today.
Yeah.
He's doing it.
Thank
you.
I
want to thank you, man. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you. And I this is a tremendous opportunity. And again, just kind of getting the message out there and the work you're doing, man. I have to thank you and much respect for everything you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Of course.
I really appreciate you coming all the way from New York and hanging with us.
Thank you.
Yes. Hey everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.